So now going back to the production manager. So back in then, the Mad Men stuff. People are going and having 3 martini lunches. I'm always surprised whenever I hear my friends who are older who were working in the 50s and 60s in animation. They went out and had 3 martini lunches and then came back and kept working.
Right.
How did that work?
Well, Bill did all right with that.
Well, they certainly churned out great work.
Right.
But as the manager, how was that for you? Were you like, oh God?
No, well, fortunately, I didn't care for martinis, and I did drink wine occasionally, but I always had a clear head when I came back to work. I wasn't really involved in that. Bill took the boys out more than he took the girls out. He would take the girl. We would have wonderful luncheons when we finished a production. He would take us to the most wonderful places to celebrate. Bill was the most generous man I have ever met in my life. Oh,
that's so nice to hear.
Oh, he was fabulous. I was telling one of the gentlemen here that when I used to come in to work in the morning, he would say, "Come in the office and put your feet up on the desk. I want to hear everything that's going on in your life."
That's so nice.
He was a wonderful, wonderful man, and we had a similar thing that happened in our lives, which is why he was so good to me. He had a mother that he had to take care of, and also brothers and a sister that he financially took care of. I had the same responsibility, and so I took care of my family all my life. Never had a chance to really have a family of my own.
Well, you did because you were their caretaker.
I was their caretaker, and my mother, my father, and my brother, and we were all very, very close. And I had the most interesting life because I was a child of the Depression, and my father was a fabulous man. He was a person that had gone from the University of California, Berkeley, right into Westinghouse, became general manager in Westinghouse over 3 different states, lost everything in the crash, came out here to California completely penniless. We were homeless so many times. I grew up sometimes in 3 or 4 different homes. I was adopted out, and then we finally ended up, we lived at Hotel Glendale, I'll never forget it. And I was sexually abused.
Wow.
Could not.
Just from being in the hotel?
Well, from a gentleman who had promised me a pair of roller skates.
Oh dear.
And a jump rope, and I had never had anything. My family could never provide me with anything. And so I had to be hospitalized. I had to have treatments. I could not go to school for a year because we were on the county relief, and they thought that there was something that I might give to somebody. And so I grew up with the most positive attitude because of my father. He said to me one day, the most important thing in life as you grow up is to be an inspiration to others. Because once you inspire somebody, they will see that in themselves, and what goes around comes around. And so I had this thing in my mind from the time I was a little child, because I used to talk to God a lot, that someday my family was going to have a home. We weren't going to be homeless. My mother said we were homeless 13 times, but I never...
You don't remember?
I don't remember that. Anyway...
It's funny how we forget when we don't want to remember.
We don't want to remember, but so eventually I made it. I saved enough money to get them a home.
Wow.
And my father only lived about 6 months before he passed away, but my mother hung on till 1994. She had a major stroke. I took care of her in my home with nurses and helpers.
But you had a house for your family.
Yes.
While you were working.
Absolutely.
And this is not something that many women were out doing.
No, I know.
It's really impressive.
Well, I just had this dream that they weren't supposed to keep suffering anymore because they should have a home. They were entitled to a home. Well, I was moved around so many times that we lost track. And so when I finally grew up and became a big lady, as I talked to God one day, I'm gonna be a big lady, and the suffering is gonna end because I knew God loved them so much.
And you.
And me, and it was going to come about, and it did. I got that job at Quartet. I saved my money, and when my mother told me one day we're going to go into another apartment because your father can't walk up the steps anymore, I said, no, we're going to have a home. And she said, what? We don't have enough money for a home. And I said, it's part of a divine plan. So
I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I need to do.
Right. So I said, I know exactly how it's going to happen. We're going to get an agent. She's going to take us around to different homes in the valley. I don't want to live in Glendale. I want to live in the valley. And there's going to be a couple or a family that's going to say, yes, I would think it would be nice to have you buy my home. And she said to me, but you're going to have to get a second. And I said, well, that's all right. I have a good credit. I'll get a second. And she said, well, I don't think you need a second. I'll carry you. So she carried me for 3 years, and I paid her $22.50 a month. And that's how I got the house. A $22,000 home. And got the family in there. And it was like, I knew it was going to work out that way.
Well, I would have to say that if your belief is that you're meant to inspire other people, that this little conversation we've had is going to do the trick.
Well, thank you. Well, I have spoken. I belong to a group called Friday Night Love. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's a group of people that are so positive, mm-hmm. and they've often asked me to get up and speak, particularly about my life, and I, you don't want to always talk about those things because they're not real. I mean,
everybody has something, and it's not always the same thing, but there's always something they can relate to.
Right.
So that's why you tell your story, because there's always something even if it's tiny, it might not be as big and as challenging as yours is, but for them, that's what they could handle.
Right.
So that's the beauty of your inspiration in inspiring other people, is you have a bigger story.
Well,
and your bigger story gives them just that little extra push.
Right.
To get them.
But coming back to Bill, I mean, see, he was so understanding of my situation, and he, and I think that's why he kept me on so long. He didn't want me to be unemployed.
I do hear you were really, really good at what you were doing.
Thank you.
So there's that too.
Yeah, I was pretty well trained.
Maybe it's this wonderful mix, because I also hear that working in the studio was a really positive experience.
It was.
That everybody who worked here was pretty happy. And I think it's one of those, like, which comes first? Being giving and loving to the people that work for you, or having a work environment that's positive? Which is, where does it all, it just keeps kind of getting bigger and better and more positive.
Absolutely.
But that's why good people come and why the best stay.
Right. Yeah, there was no other studio that I would have ever wanted to go to. I worked for the best. Quartet, Chuck Jones, Metro-Goldwyn.
What'd you do at Chuck Jones?
Animation checking.
For which movies? When was it?
In the 60s, 70s.
So a mixture of...
It wasn't the dot in the line. Phantom Toll Booth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be the 70s. Were you there for The Grinch?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, I worked on The Grinch. I worked on Phantom Toll Booth. I didn't work on the dot in the line. That was an Emmy award.
Oscar.
Yeah. But you have a great background. It's wonderful.
I have to talk to people on your level.
Yes.
You have to know what I'm talking about.
Anyway, but I've had a great career. loved working for Bill. It was because it was so personal. He was like a second father. I've often thought I should write a book about the two greatest men I ever worked for. One was my father. One was Bill Melendez. My father was so terrific. You know, my father was brilliant in that. This is just a side thing. He was an inventor. And many years ago, he invented, along with another guy, a piece of equipment that worked on oil well drillings. And do you know, he still has this invention, but we can't do anything with it because they say it's outdated. I still see a guy walking around taking the water meeting numbers, but that's what he developed. He developed a device whereby you could read the water meter without having to have a man do it. Oh. You would put a card in a little prototype thing, and it would read it automatically to the water department. So anyway, the thing was, he took me one time with him to have an interview with Howard Hughes. And I was 14 years old, and I sat down there in that hotel waiting for my dad to have this interview with Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes said, well, yeah, I'm interested in your device, but he says, I have to put it out for 5 years out there in the, to see how it would really work. And my dad said, well, I can't do that. I'm sorry, but I don't have 5 years. See, my dad had a heart condition.
Right.
That was another thing. I was in a car with him one time when I was only 10, and he had a heart attack.
Yikes.
And I had to drive the car. He had to tell me how to drive.
You get quite a lot of stories. Yes, they're great. They're sad, they're hard, but they're really fascinating. It's your resilience. I mean, I find it really beautiful that you talk about something dark and then you're like, and then something wonderful happened. You know?
Yeah, I never
just bouncing back.
Well, it was because he was so positive, and my mother was negative.
But you chose the positive side.
I chose the positive side.
Isn't that wonderful?
And anyway, I remember when Dad came down from the elevator, I said, well, how was your interview with Howard Hughes? He says, oh, I don't know. He spent most of his time washing his hands.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. On that note,
yeah,
this has been a wonderful interview and very inspiring. And,
Thank you.
I think for women who own businesses, women who want to be in business, because it's still challenging, especially in Hollywood.
Right.
I think that they can look to someone like you who said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You just have to do it anyway.
You have
and
to.
It's inspiring to hear that and to hear about your career. And thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And
thank you, Leslie, for listening to all of this.
No, I know there are a lot of people who have been inspired by this, and if you want to hear more, then you can go on our YouTube channel and watch a lot of other animators who also, as an aside, they mentioned how amazing she was to work with, and about how wonderful Bill was, and all sorts of other wonderful stories. Disney and Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera, and Bill Melendez Studios. So check out our website, and thank you so much, and our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.